We're recording, so I'm going to make a start. So big welcome to everybody who's joining or watching live. My name's Matt. I've got a really long title and I hate titles, but I work at Bromley House Library. I look after membership now and engagement. So that's really all about making the library, I think, wider known, and also working with volunteers and our members to deliver a library service. When I was first approached about this, one of the organisers was really intrigued about what a subscription library is. So I'm going to really go through a sort of quite a comprehensive background to the library, the building we're in, how we work today, lots of questions or chance for you to ask lots of questions, but hopefully answering any questions you might have about how we work. I'm going to show you an awful lot of pictures. I've also got some books with me and some of our rarities, which we're really fortunate to have on site. So I will be sharing those with you, and also some images from our collection as well. So I'm going to start sharing my presentation now with you. Okay. So that's a bit of a welcome screen, which I've already done. So I'm just going to move on to the next slide and who we are and where we are in 2022. So a subscription library is independent of local authority funding. We are totally independent of any government funding as well. We are a registered charity. We get our income from members paying a subscription fee. I can talk about fees and how much it is to join later on, but I just want to set the scene for people, because some people might not have seen a subscription library before, or visited one or heard of them. There is a network of subscription libraries across the country. We are a member of the Independent Library Association, which is a network of independent libraries ranging in size, some as small as a front room, where you have to get the key from a little cupboard and let yourself in, to libraries like ourselves, Leeds Subscription Library, the Portico in Manchester, so the Midland Institute in Birmingham. So we do vary. We're a very diverse bunch, but essentially we have the same aims of providing a library service. So what do we do? A lot of people perhaps think we are a historic, just house historic collections, but we are a busy working modern library, still with a foot in the past, and I'll talk more about that, but always looking to the future as well, to deliver a modern library service to our users and visitors and research visitors. So as well as housing historic collections and specialist collections, we are continually looking at buying books and broadening our collections within our classifications. And I'll talk about that a little bit more as we go on. So let's have a look at our history. So we were established in 1816. This is before the Public Libraries Act of 1850, and a few years actually before a public central library was available to the people of Nottingham. So there was a group of people who met, looked at actually forming a library for the people of Nottingham, but let's bear in mind who those people were. It wasn't probably as accessible as we are now. So people were looking to broaden their access to literature. There were already in place and in established circulation libraries, as they were known in Nottingham, but it was felt that they weren't covering what was needed by maybe the middle classes. So the library was founded in 1816. It wasn't housed here originally. and people bought a share in the library and then paid an annual subscription. So I'll just move back to there. That is actually a share certificate. The image there, that's one of our share certificates. So originally, people bought a share. So that originally cost 5 guineas, and then people paid an annual subscription of 2 guineas. Women were always allowed to join in their own right, and I think it's really important we mention that, because at that time that was quite a key thing. Many organisations or institutions would not have even considered that. However, of the original 169 subscribers, only 9 of those were women. In 1816, we were in premises in Carlton Street in Nottingham. And the image you can see now on the screen is the frontispiece of our original 1816 catalogue. This is before the card system index of cataloguing books. The library printed a catalogue, which our members then purchased. It was updated and people could then buy the updates, and then a full catalogue will be printed every few years for people to buy. So we're really fortunate that we still have books on our shelves from our original 1816 catalogue, and we do have the original catalogue on site. So you can see there, established April the 2nd, 1816. So the library was rapidly growing, and by 1820, the library committee were looking at actually growing and buying a place to accommodate the growth. And Nottingham Subscription Library, as it was known, bought the premises we're now in 1820 at auction, and that image there is the auction details detailing the specification of the property. And 1821, Nottingham Subscription Library moves in. There's a few names being bandied about. So we are called Bromley House Library, but in its very beginnings, it was called Nottingham Subscription Library. And you will see on our books NSL stamped into our books, and also on the spines of our books. It did change its name to Bromley House Library. It does cause confusion. We still get calls several times a year, people thinking we're in Bromley, but the building is called Bromley House, and then it then became known as Bromley House Library. But you may hear it referred to, especially in older texts, as Nottingham Subscription Library. But Nottingham Subscription Library, Bromley House Library, one and the same thing. However, on all our current websites, print, everything like that, we are known as Bromley House Library. Right, let's move on and explain a little bit more. So I've just given a little background to the library, but let's have a look at the building we're in. I'm just going to move that along there. So the building we're in was commissioned in 1746 for the banker George Smith, for him and his wife Mary. Now Mary was descendant of royalty, and the banking family, I think, were quite keen to elevate their position in society, and I think Mary was a good choice for that. However, her family are quoted as saying there is the air of the counting house about them. So the Smiths established the bank, Smith Bank in Nottingham, Smith's Bank. And actually the other image is a Nottingham Bank £50 note, which was bought at auction and kindly donated to the library. But the house was described as the best built house in town. It's 5-bay, Palladian style, Georgian townhouse, 5 stories as well. So rather large, as you might expect, even looking at that picture. We don't look like that now, although the top half does. The bottom half has changed considerably. So with the works being completed in 1752, the family moved in, but they weren't here that long. If you think back to what I've just said, the house was put up for auction by 1820. So George Smith, his son, then inherited the house. He fell on harder times. He was in prison for a short time. He went through a divorce. She got back her marriage settlement, and so the house becomes vacant. At one time, it was used to billet soldiers as well, just before Bromley House, Nottingham Subscription Library purchased it. So the name Bromley comes from George Smith Jr. changing his name to actually try and inherit from a relative, which was quite a common practice. So he changed his name to receive this inheritance. It didn't work, but then the house became known as Bromley House. So he changed his surname from Smith to Bromley, became Bromley House, and here we are now, still Bromley House. So let's have a look. I think this is what you all want to have a look at, especially. I apologise, my background's not very nice. I look like I'm in a fridge. This is the unglamorous back office. I would have sat in one of our rooms, but the library's really busy today. And I really didn't want, everyone's really comfortable in the library, our members, and I didn't want to turf them out of their seats. So I'm in the fridge. But let's have a look around the library. And this is, it really takes your breath away, because this is the hallway, and you can see here a really fine cantilevered staircase. The first image on the left is looking up to the cupola, and then the middle image is a staircase sweeping up to the first floor. And then the other two images of the cupola and actually looking down from one of the landings, the second floor landing, that is, right down to the bottom. So that gives you an impression of the welcome that you get in the library, or the first things that you see as you come through the door. Bearing in mind, as you come in now, either side of the main door as you come in are two shops. So that part of the library or the house were converted to shops in the 1920s, and there have been shops ever since. At the minute, it is at one side's a newsagent's, the other side is Bernardo's charity shop. The library's always sought to make income from tenants in some various ways, even from the very beginnings of the library. So in the basements, there's been wine merchants in the past, basket makers. In the attics, we've had photographers on site, we've had people renting the rooms in various ways. And then retail units in the 20th century were deemed the most appropriate way to really secure the future of the library. And they're still part of our building, and we get rent from them. So really helps us with our income. And also part of Nando's restaurant is part of the library as well. Their kitchens are part of our building. Actually underneath where I'm sitting now, so not very good for a vegetarian like me, but anyway, this is probably one of the most photographed rooms in the library. It's the Neville Hoskins reading room. First of all, without the books, you can imagine what a grand, fine reception room this is. This is on the first floor of the building. So this would have been the principal reception room for the family house. Fine plasterwork ceiling, amazing fireplace. The painting in the middle of the fireplace isn't original to the house. The family, I believe, took the painting that was there. That painting has a different story about it. It was actually painted by a library member in lieu of his share. However, the minutes of the library show that we still chased him for his subscription, which he wasn't very happy about. And that's by, it's a painting of Clifton Grove by Rawson Walker. It's a beautiful painting. That's been extensively restored as the ceiling has. If you can imagine this building having coal fires, gas lighting, the pollution of a city before the Clean Air Act, you can still see soot marks on many of our books and even smell it on the shelves. And when we're still cleaning, it gets very, you can tell that there were coal fires in this building. So it had an extensive restoration, the ceiling and this room and the lighting, probably I think 8 years ago now. So in here lives the sort of early collections of the library, and most of these have stayed in situ in this room. So you can see to the left, just behind the ladder, a header board for the shelves. No, they live normally on top, sorry. They live on top of the shelf. Travels there, and our travel section still lives in this room, as does poetry. And you can see on the top right, you can see poetry up there. So these collections have not moved from this room. Many of our other collections have moved around the library. As the library's grown and developed, as rooms have become available to us as a building, our collections have moved around quite extensively. However, in here, travel and poetry remain as they came into this building in 1821. I love this picture because it really shows you the room hasn't changed a great deal. This is 1899, the same room. You can see the picture, you can see the fireplace, heavily soot stained. You can see the books. That's the librarian at the time, Arthur Lineker, 1899. And you can see the plasterwork ceiling. But it really gives you an idea that this room has, for many ways, remained unchanged. So there we go. That's today, and that's 1899. This is what we call the main library. When the library moved in, they made several alterations, quite large alterations over several years. So in the 1840s, this space was opened up, the floor was taken out and the gallery was put in. 1850s, you have the spiral staircase, another one of our most photographed sites in the library. Our spiral staircase was put into the library there. And then these walls were opened up, and this is what we call the main library. But if we look again, 1899, really, we're still looking pretty much the same. We have the spiral staircase. We have lost the chandelier from this room, but we still have the case here. Unfortunately, the globe here, that was sold a number of years ago. Huge shame. We had 2 globes, I believe, celestial and terrestrial, but unfortunately they were sold. We've had to sell a number of items over the years, furniture and some of our books. We don't do that anymore. Well, we do sell some books. We have a book sale, but not historic items. But really, we've had to sell items in the past to make ends meet, to really ensure the survival of the library. So I'll mention that a little bit later on as well. But I love that contrast. Well, also, you know, you can see we're still very much in the same vein as we were in 1899. This is a gallery, not for those who are suffer from vertigo. The spiral staircase is self-supporting. It has no central support column, which is, so it's a helix. When we had our renovations recently, in 2019, the contractors working actually did secure the top here at the top of the stairs with some bolts, which there were some bolts there, but they weren't very secure. So that gives you a really good view now from the gallery down into the main library, and the spiral staircase with its lack of central support column. We still only allow one person at a time up the staircase. It does rattle a bit. I think, like any good building, it has to have a bit of give. But we still say one person at a time. So this is one of our other rooms in the library. This is called the George Green room. I'll talk about George Green a little bit later on. In here lives older fiction. This is from the gallery leading to a little room, two of my favorite rooms in the library, called the alcove, and the image to the right is the Ellen Harrington room. In here lives natural sciences, philosophy, psychology, history, biography. The alcove before this room, before the Ellen Harrington room, like I said, two of my favorite rooms in the library, purely because of what they house, my interests, very much natural sciences, but I just find them the most comfortable rooms in the library. So I'm going to have a talk about the library and our inventions and innovation. So if you think about the time when the library was established, people were really interested in science discovery, looking at how the world worked. So at Bromley House, we have a legacy, and we're very fortunate to keep that legacy of recording the weather and time. And George Green, I mentioned the George Green room, one of our famous library members, George Green, and this question, whether we were a museum or a library. So I'll talk about that a little bit. I'm just going to get my notes on this. I can't remember everything, so I'm just going to get my notes about our innovation. So the picture here is a meteorological journal. It's open at the page for 1840 there. Now, this was a handwritten weather journal taken at the library between 1838 and 1841. So members installed a remote indicating weather vane on the roof, which is connected by a series of rods to a wind machine. There were two wind machines in the library. One is still functional, and we had it repaired during our restoration in 2019. So we were recording the weather, the wind. This weather journal also recorded atmospheric pressure, temperature, wind direction and speed, taken at various times throughout the day, cloud formations, sunrise, sunset, amount of rainfall, and it was compiled by Richard Harris, who was the library porter. Now, he was also recording astrological data as well. So lunar aspects, mutual aspects, so positioning of celestial bodies as well, he was recording. We didn't know about this meteorological journal until probably, was it 2 years ago? When somebody contacted the library and said they'd found this. I believe it had been passed through their family. And then the latest person to have it felt it really should come back to Bromley House Library. They were actually in the West Midlands, I think. And so they contacted the library. Anya, our collections manager, liaised with them. It came over to us by special delivery, and we were amazed and astounded to have it back in our collection. Just the very nature of it and the detail and the beauty of it is amazing. But it's just such an important document of the library's history and connection with recording weather and scientific measurement. And I think you can appreciate it really is an amazing document. So this is George Green. I'll talk about George Green now a little bit. I just want to make sure I get all my facts right about him, because there's so much to remember. So So George Green, he was born in 1793. He was the son of a Nottingham miller. He was a library member and a mathematician. And in 1828, he published an essay on the application of mathematical analysis to the theories of electricity and magnetism. So it's still influential now in physics and the field of research, his essay. And it was published 5 years before George Green attended university. He was the son of a miller, probably had very little formal schooling, so his achievements amazing. So hence the George Green Room. There is Green's Windmill in the city of Nottingham, and the gentleman on the left there of this screen is George Green. The middle is the wind direction machine, installed in 1821. It was restored in June 2000, but then unfortunately it was broken again. And like I said, in our 2019 restoration, the rods that power the wind direction machine, which are attached to the weather vane on the roof, were restored and repaired. And now this is behind our main library counter, where we sit and issue the books to people. And on a very windy day, you can see it spinning and hear it whirring around. So it's quite a comforting sound, really. So the image on the right is a helichronometer. It's more accurate than a sundial. And this was given to the library in 1999, located in the library garden. Enables people to accurately tell the time to within a couple of seconds. I've not tried it. My colleague Katie has tried it and confirms it does work. So, so a little bit more advanced than a sundial, and that is in the library garden. So some more things. So we've got barometers in the library. We've still got 2 barometers. They're in the main library, and you can see an example of one of our barometers on the left there. The image in the middle, it just looks like a library room, doesn't it? But then there's this unusual brass strip on the floor, and this is our meridian line, which is amazing. It is sets the time to local time. This is before it was laid down, before railway time as it was known, and then Greenwich Mean Time, when areas had their own time. And it sets at midday. The light shines through the aperture. You can see in the window there a hole. When the sun shines through that, it tracks along the meridian line across the room there, and then hits the wall at the back of the room. Library members would gather to set their watches to midday by the meridian line. And our clocks, 2 of our clocks, long case clocks in the library, and you can see one on the right there, they were set to Nottingham time, and it was 4 minutes 33 seconds behind Greenwich Mean Time. So we're only one of 4. There's the prime meridian, Greenwich, there's the Harbour Master's Office or Customs House at Ramsgate, and then there's one in Durham Cathedral as well. You can see on the clock there, you can see the writing there, and it does actually say Nottingham 4 minutes 33 seconds behind London, Greenwich. We don't set our clocks now to that, because I'd always be finishing work late, and they'd only, over the course of a year, quite a lot of time. But anyway, we'll move on. So books, this is what we're here for, well as our architecture and history. I mentioned we're a working, busy library. We currently buy about 1,000 books a year. We have nearly 50,000 items in the collection, and we also have an array of historic and special collections. I think it's really important that I mention we don't have off-site storage. We don't have any storage underground. We don't store any books off-site like a number of libraries do. All of our collection is on open shelves or in cases. We don't have plans to expand, so we are the first generation of staff to really have to consider what are we going to do with our books, because we are running out of shelf space. Now, some of that happens naturally. Say, for example, a really popular title Richard Osman, let's take Richard Osman, huge at the minute, isn't he? When a new release like his comes out, we will buy 4 up to a maximum of 5 copies, just so our library members can access the book quickly and there isn't a huge waiting list. Once that reservation list has reduced, we will then be left with 1 copy on the shelf. So that creates a little bit of space, but we really have to start looking at withdrawing books. We don't withdraw from our historic collection. We don't withdraw from our older sections pre-1945. But we are having to withdraw a number of our modern fiction titles. Now, like everything has a fashion. Series of books come in and out of fashion. So that's the things that we concentrate on withdrawing to create room and to create space. We also will withdraw non-fiction books where perhaps a more seminal piece of work has been produced, or we have too much duplication in some sections as well. We will start looking at withdrawing, but it's a very we don't just withdraw indiscriminately. We will go through a checklist to see if it's available elsewhere, if other libraries have copies. So we really look carefully at what we withdraw, but if we don't withdraw items, we are going to run out of room. So the Bromley House classification system, this really throws a lot of people and our members. We are unique. We predate the Dewey Decimal System. So I'll talk about fiction first, because fiction's relatively easy. We do shelve by author, which is encouraging, alphabetically, which is also encouraging for a library. We split our fiction between older and newer fiction, and the split is 1970. So on the first floor, any author's work, or the majority of their work, if it's produced post 1970, lives on the first floor. If it's pre-1970, it lives upstairs. And the split is 1970 because that was the introduction, I believe, of the ISBN. So all your classics live upstairs, from your Austins, Dickens, Graham Greene, Hemingway, and then all your modern fiction lives downstairs. Non-fiction, however, is classified by our own classification system. Some subscription libraries had their own classification system. Leeds, for example, had their own, but they actually converted to the Dewey Decimal System. We've decided not to do that. It's part of our history, and I think it would be really sad if we lost it, and I think all staff are in an agreement of that. It can take a little while to get used to it, but once you do, it seems to work well. So we shelve books, essentially non-fiction books, in date order. So your earliest book will be at the very beginning, far left of a shelf, and then your latest book will be on the far right. Bear in mind that could be 5 bays deep, 30 plus shelves. So subject matters won't live together. If you, for example, you were looking for a book on Mozart within the biography, like a biography of Mozart, you won't find them all together. You will find, if there was one produced in 1910, somewhere over here, and then if there was one produced today, it will be either far down the shelf or actually on a different floor, because some of our collections, predominantly history and biography, straddle 2 floors, sometimes 3 for the very latest books. So here's our classification system. You can see the classifications. Theology was given the letter A. We don't know why, but there is some thinking that perhaps theology was given A, start of the alphabet, the most important subject at the time. So theology A, and then it goes BA, philosophy, natural philosophy, natural sciences, CA, history, biography, CB, travel and topography, CC, antiquities, DA, literary criticism, DB, poetry and drama, DC is our fiction classification, DD, miscellaneous, collected works as well of authors, not poetry anthologies, because they would fall within poetry, but then if there was sort of collected essays, they would fall under DD. E is fine arts, and F is politics, economics and law. And we have a section G here for journals as well. So quite unusual. And everything gets a classification number. And then our non-fiction has the classification mark on the spine as well. So it's quite easy to find. You would look in our catalogue and say, for example, I was looking for a book and I got the code BB1372, which would be a natural philosophy, natural sciences book. I would go to the shelves and I would be able to find BB1372 on the shelf, and it's running in numerical order as well. So it's quite easy to find. The beauty of our system is you find really obscure subjects next to each other. So sometimes you might not think you're in the mood for something, and then you're having a browse on the shelves and it suddenly takes you by surprise. We still accession by hand, so everything that comes into the library will be written in what we call an accessions register or a stock book. We're fortunate to have our stock books from the very beginning of the library, and this is classified stock book number 1. So sometimes called accessions registers as well, for Nottingham Subscription Library, and this is it. And we still record every item that comes into the library by hand. We feel it's really important. It gives a journey of a book, and then if a book is ever lost or stolen, maybe, not that we don't have that, but it has happened in the past, or if it's been sold, or if it's been withdrawn from stock, or if we replace it, we annotate its accession in one of these books. And so it really gives you the life of a book in pen and paper. We do some electronic things, and I'll talk about that as well. But this, if I show you, I'll give you an idea. So you can see here, which is amazing. You can see this from our very beginnings, are some of our BA books, so philosophy, psychology, and you can see them being recorded within here. If there's any red writing, which you can see down here, if I show you that, that's because it's been sold. And they were sold in 1926, those books. 4 books there on that page were sold in 1926. Unfortunately, a number of our items were sold early 20th century, after the Second World War, 1960s, 1970s, we unfortunately had to sell quite a number of books. I'll talk about those as well as we go on. So, how do we look after our books? So I'm just going to talk about some of the challenges. Open shelves. Most of our books are on open shelves for our members to look at and use, but we're a working library, not a museum. And well, it sounds a bit fancy, but it's a term that is often used in historic environments, agents of deterioration. So we are an open library. We have single glazing in many of our rooms, and like I said, many of our books have been subject to coal fires, pollution, dust, huge amount of dust. So they are or have been real challenges, and are still real challenges for us in terms of also maintaining our humidity and environments for our books. Too dry and books really begin to suffer and crack. The picture you can see there is some books that have really suffered from deterioration on the spine. You can see the dust actually on top of the books there as well. You can see where some of the spines have split. I've got some examples here. You can see here from these books, they're tied. You can see the leather split. You can see the spine is split. You can see the book is tied. If an environment's too dry, leather will start to deteriorate. Organic items like leather, like vellum, will start to change shape. Glues will dry and desiccate. Paper will dry out and become too brittle. Too humid in an environment, you can get the growth of mold, insect infestation, silverfish that graze on paper. So although we're not a museum, we do monitor our environments, and also sunlight. The library, the front of the library faces north, but the back faces south. So some of our cases have UV protection and blinds that we pull down on extremely sunny days, just to protect our books from UV and light. This is a really good example of first edition Secret Garden that was really damaged. It was actually in a box. It was falling apart. It's a beautiful book. Illustrations by Arthur Rackham. You can see here the spine split, the pages are falling apart. We have a very successful adopt a book scheme, and believe it or not, that's the same book now after repair. Our bookbinder really tries to preserve as much as possible of the original book. So where possible, the front boards will be kept, and they've been kept, and the back board has been kept. The text block of the book, which is this part, has then been sewn back in and rebound. We have new leather here, spine, but essentially he has replaced everything that was on that original, and it's now available to view in the library. This is a not for loan book, but it is available to view in the library. Okay, whoops, sorry, let's move on. So, special collections, some of our oldest and largest books, and some collection highlights for you. That's actually an illustration, another Arthur Rackham illustration from Alice in Wonderland, which is an amazing illustration. So some of our special collections, we have a special collections room. We have the James Ward collection in the first image, and also the Fowler Egyptology collection. We also have the Philip James Bailey collection, and we also have the Alan Sillitoe collection. So in here, we have a number of special collections. We often get researchers to the library looking to use the library. So we'll talk about this one on the left first. James Ward, he was a bibliophile, he was a collector and bibliographic researcher, wide range of interest, and collected books and artworks across many subjects. He began to donate books himself to Bromley House in 1899, and then in 1914, he gave his entire set of local history books, and they've been kept together ever since in this collection, now housed in this unit here. Again, not for loan, but are available for reference. He was an amazing scrapbooker at the time. He kept an awful lot of ephemera. He would make jottings and notes and writing the margins of his book, so they give a really great insight into what was happening at the time and his life as well. The books in the smaller brown cabinet are a collection of Egyptology books donated by the Fowler family. A great collection. They all live together there. If you think about, well, we've just had the anniversary of the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb, similar time that all these books were put together and then donated to us. So 1920s, amazing time for Renaissance, for interest in Egypt. And then we also have the Philip James Bailey collection, and that's just on the left. You can see it housed in the unit there. He was a poet and philosopher, so includes many works of his poetry and by other authors. Quite religious in nature, so an awful lot of theological philosophy, esoteric and mystical subjects in that collection, so it's a really interesting collection. The one on the top right is the Alan Sillitoe collection. That is the contents, or the majority of the contents, of Alan Sillitoe's personal library, famous Nottingham author. And they're the contents of his own library, given to us after his death by his partner. And an amazing resource, because again, those books actually have a number of comments, jottings, ephemera associated to Alan Sillitoe himself. So they live exclusively as collections within this room for use in the library. I've just popped this image talking about Egypt. This is from one of our largest books. It's an elephant folio, which is 23 inches high. We have a collection of 4 elephant folios, the Monuments of Egypt and Nubia, 4 volumes published 1833 to 1845. So really, really amazing resource for the library. Sometimes a 2-person job to get the book out because it's pretty heavy. So huge renaissance or interest in ancient Egypt, and so Champion, who put this together, he recorded the in 1828, I think 1829, and it's actually illustrated with amazing images like this that are on the walls of tombs and monuments in Egypt. So we also hold a collection of 300 plant specimens collected between 1821 and 1824 by a library member called Thomas Jowett. This is the Nottingham catchfly, specimen 135. He donated, or he gave his herbarium to the library after collecting them and compiling them, and it's remained here on site ever since. An amazing resource, over 300 specimens, plant specimens. The Nottingham catchfly, interestingly, was deemed to be extinct in the city. Its main habitat on the castle walls was destroyed, but there are now plans to get it re-established back in and around the castle, and we have one growing in the garden here at the library. I've just got some images from some of our books, some great images. This is fish of, I think, rivers and lakes. Not too sure what fish that is, unfortunately. Okay, I'll just talk about what's been happening in the past few years here. We were placed as a building at risk. In 2019, we had a huge renovation project for our roof. You can see here the whole roof, the top floor was covered by scaffold, and the roof came off, floors were repaired. The attics on the top floor were really in a poor state of repair. Sorry, folks. There we go. They were in a really poor state of repair. So we had a grant from Historic England, and that was about just over 400,000, and we had to make up the rest to complete the project, which we did through various fundraising campaigns and donations and other grants. This gives you an idea of what the roof looked like during restoration. Tiles off. You can see also the different pitches and different areas of flat roof on the library, and that was really contributing to the water ingress in many areas, the poor drainage on the roof. This is the Thoroton room where our special collections live, and in here at the time of restoration you can see there is an acropop holding the floor above up, and we have boxes of books ready to go off site. 10,000 books were removed off site in 2019 to allow the restoration to take place of the top floors. That's a couple are being repaired. And I think that's a great image because this is the top floor now. That's with the roof, with the tiles off. This room before the restoration had a weight limit. You couldn't go past a certain point. It was roped off. And on the right, you can see what the room looks now. So an amazing space, an amazing achievement by the contractors who did an amazing job. The library was only closed for 3 weeks, actually. To members and staff, and the rest just happened behind polythene and scaffold, and huge thanks to our members for putting up with what they did have to put up with, and ourselves. Actually, it was hard work, but it was really rewarding to see it at the end. And that's another of our rooms there. You can see with the windows out, floors up, and now on the right what it looks like now was an amazing space for reading and research, writing and relaxing at Bromley House. So I mentioned the need to rent out areas. We have a long association with photography in Bromley House Library. We're the first photographic studio in the East Midlands, 1841. Upstairs, we had a studio, photographic studio, dark room and plate room for developing, and photographers were on site until 1955. So we've got over 100 years of photography on site at Bromley House Library. So Alfred Barber, first photographer on site here, also installed a revolving skylight in the top floor as well. That disappeared, but we've replaced it. If you look at this image on the right, you can see we have a skylight, so we've put it back in, and this is called the studio because it was used by photographers as a photographic studio. But we've purposefully kept the darkroom looking like a photographer's darkroom with our camera. The plate room is largely left the same, but it's now housing our art and architecture books mostly, and it's a great space to work. But purposefully, we've left the building looking, or the rooms looking like what they look like pre-restoration. We didn't want to destroy that patina, but also that all those layers of history. I tend to refer to it as stabilized decay because it really gives you an idea of what it was like up here. It's now safe, everything's been sort of stabilized, but it's gives you a great idea of what the attics were like pre-restoration. And this is the back of the property. I could talk a lot more about everything we've been discussing, but this is the back of the property, and this is our garden at Bromley House. Now, the garden has been identified, the garden isn't listed, it's been identified as a really important Georgian townhouse garden. The garden itself is later lawn at this end with a path around, and towards the building we have beds, but unfortunately in the past some concrete was laid, so the plans are to remove the concrete, repair the flag paving, get the garden listed. If it becomes listed, we can then go on the Historic Parks and Gardens register, and then really connect the garden with the library and the house. The garden is integral to the enjoyment by our members of the library. It really serves as a space to escape, to relax and to read. And equally, we really want to bring to life the history of the garden, as well as telling the story and history of the house and its architecture and its collections, and also relate our collections to the garden. So we have a first edition Gerard's Herbal, for example. So we want to look at that and look at the plants growing in the garden and make connections to that. So really, for our members and staff, the garden is an oasis. I think that's about it for me. I don't want to talk too much longer, but I can see a question has come in. How many members subscribe to the library and how many books? So members, we have about 1,650, but that is memberships. So you can apply for a household membership. So on one membership, there could be 4 people. So let's take the nuclear family, or mum, dad and 2 children, for example. So we have more people than memberships, if that makes sense, like a lot of membership organizations. How many books? So we're nearly 50,000. We have nearly 50,000 books on site. We do have a small collection of CDs, audio books, and we also have a small classical music section as well. Yes, nearly 50,000. So you can see the problems of acquiring 1,000 books a year and then trying to make room for all these in a library with no more room. Oh, Francis has said, could you say something about the excellent bookmobile? So yes, during COVID, when restrictions were eased, we started a bookmobile, and we're continuing doing that. So for people who cannot get out to us, obviously during the pandemic, lots of people couldn't get out to us, and even when restrictions were slowly easing or we were placed in different tiers, but when we could get back into the library to work, we did, and we delivered a bookmobile. And people put their requests in, we put their bank books together, issued them, and then they were sent off with one of our volunteers. Well, he's a trustee actually, David, and he delivered the books out to, yeah, I mean, he did a wide area, Nottingham and Nottinghamshire. He went into Derbyshire as well. So many of our members live out of the city centre. So he was delivering. At some point during the pandemic, we had 2 deliveries a week. Katie, my colleague, was also delivering as well, but we've kept it on. I think as awful as the pandemic was, it gave organisations like us the chance to actually look at what we delivered and how we could deliver it. And many of our members, for whatever reason, can't get out sometimes. They may be caring for somebody, they may be ill, they may just be not very well for a few weeks, so we can get books to them. So it's a really valuable service. So what's the subscription cost? Question coming in. So the subscription cost at the minute is £132 a year, so £11 a month. That also includes access to the library, but also our digital services. We also have a digital library, and we also have our members can access with the Idler, which is an organisation that produces short courses on a wide variety of subjects. So that's included with the subscription. We do a half-price membership if you live more than 50 miles away from the library. We have many members who want to join the library but live quite a way away, and so we're not going to use it that often. You can still make use of the digital services, and that's half price if you live more than 50 miles away. Also, if you are in receipt of any income related benefits, we will do a half price membership for you as well. Okay, talks in the upcoming months. So we do before I answer that, someone's put, is the library open to non-members, which is a great question. We do guided tours throughout the year. We also open for Heritage Open Days. In September, we do tours. We also open for other events as well. If you come to a talk, you will get to see inside the library as well, but you wouldn't have a full tour as such. We offer free tours throughout the year on Wednesday afternoons and Saturday afternoons. They are full now. They're coming to the end for this year. We're not running any in December, and probably not in January. Later January we will start them. People can book online or book direct with us, and that's the top to bottom history tour with one of our volunteers who are amazing, really knowledgeable, give you a great insight into the life of the library, and that's the way most of our non-members visit. However, if you were interested in joining the library, you can book a chat with us. We can introduce the library to you, talk about the membership application process, show you some of the key rooms, and really happy for anybody who's interested in joining to do that. Because some days we're a bit thin on the ground, it's best to book those in advance so we can ensure that there is a member of staff who can just devote a bit of time with you without leaving someone vulnerable if they're on their own on the main desk, for example. Talks. So yes, we do a really vibrant and varied talks program. Most of our talks are accessible on Zoom as well. We do a hybrid talk. Another benefit of membership is that you do get invited as members to a number of free talks throughout the year, with a partnership we have with the Historical Association. Other talks that you have to pay for, members get reduced rates as well, and advance notice of those. So talks coming up, we've got a great one in December coming up, the history of pantomime. Then we have one on sustainable fashion in February. We also have one entitled The Unheroic Robin Hood. That's coming up in January. All our talks are available to view online, the dates and information about the talk. I'm just going to get some of the information for you. Let's have a look. What's coming up? So yeah, brief history of pantomimes on Saturday the 3rd of December. And then we have a library member talking about his work, his book, The Orcadian Trilogy. And then we have a Burns Night celebration on Wednesday, the 25th of January. And then Robin Hood, on Heroic History of Robin Hood, on Saturday, the 1st of February. And Stella Claxton is looking at clothing longevity versus fast fashion, which is really topical. And that's on Saturday, the 18th of February. Okay. And also, just to mention, our programs for next year, we'll start putting them out soon. And we've got a great series of talks and events relating to the garden. We have some great speakers, hopefully, booked and confirmed, including, perhaps shouldn't say, but hopefully Sally Vickers, but also Todd Gowan-Smith, I think is curator of Historic Royal Palace Gardens as well. So that's something to look forward to. Oh, another great question. Do you cooperate at all with the other private subscription libraries? We do. I mean, we share best practice. There is the Independent Library Association Network. So they hold a conference every year where the libraries can present papers. We also have presentations on different elements of our work. That was in Birmingham last year, so it was really good to connect with other libraries. We are all very independent in many ways. We all have our own quirks. But we also have commonalities which we work towards, and our colleagues in other independent libraries, we have very similar problems and challenges and opportunities as well. So we often work together to discuss those and make sure that we can operate in the best way that we can for our membership and also for the wider public. Okay, I think maybe. Has anybody got any other questions? I feel I've rabbited it on, so okay. Oh, another good question here. For those who are outside Nottingham and will be driving, parking facilities. We are in the city centre. I would also say we are not accessible for wheelchairs at the minute. We don't have a lift. Parking in the city centre, like most cities, is varied. There is on-street parking in and around the library and public car parks. There's also a park and ride scheme in Nottingham, which I would encourage, because sometimes the city centre can be difficult to navigate, but we don't have parking outside the library. They're very strict in terms of dropping off and picking up as well. There are some bays on our street that are for blue badge holders. They're a bit like hen's teeth, rare, where spaces come up. But so if anybody was thinking of visiting, if you were looking at making an appointment with us to visit, to talk about membership, or if you booked onto one of our guided tours and had a question about parking or access, then give the library a call or an email, because we'll do our best to direct you to local car parks and just talk about the restrictions. So our road, if you travel down it after 10 and you're not a badge holder, you would get a fine, unfortunately. So yes, it's quite strict. So we're not the most accessible, but we do our best to bring the library to people where we can. And if anybody can access our website, it's open, and our collections on the website are also open for people to view. So you can have a search of our collections without being a member, and you can see what books we're buying, you can see our latest news, you can see our latest additions to stock. So that I often point people to the website as a first place to start exploring more about the library if you were thinking of joining. Okay, any other questions? Oh, thanks, Francis. I feel I've lost my thread a bit, so I apologise. It's been a very hectic time at the library, and I hope I did it justice. So I think, yeah, I'm sure I could tell you a lot more, and I'll probably go home thinking, I wish I'd said this, I wish I'd said that. But yeah, I feel like hopefully I've imparted a lot of information today. But if anyone's got any questions, I've got a direct email. Call the library, they'll give you my direct email, and I'll put it here now in the chat. If anybody wants to send me a message, or you want to clarify anything about membership or ask about membership, that's my email. Lovely. Right, I will depart then. I'm going to leave. I will hopefully see some of you soon, because I know I'm in touch with members who have watched and helped pull the Middleway Words Festival together. And hopefully next year we can do a little bit more and bring more of Bromley House Library to you. Okay, I'm going to sign off now.